Well, Dr. Karyn, thank you so much for joining me again on this episode of Lynch with a Leader. It's an honor to have you again.
Listen, as I was sharing with you just before, I am so excited to be with you today. I loved our interview last year. I felt we could just keep talking, and so thank you for the invite back.
Well, it was so funny. I got off that call last year and I'm like, I didn't even hardly get to all my questions. I had like 2 pages I didn't even get to because the conversation was so good.
Yeah.
And you have been given such a gift to help leaders unpack what they don't even know they have packed up. Is
Mm.
that something that you think about? Or is it something you feel like just comes pretty innately to you?
I am just so purpose driven. Like I
Mm.
honestly feel like I am very clear on my purpose and my mission and to really help not like really all ages. As we talked about last year,
Yep.
my work really started working with teenagers, and then teenagers grew up, and then I started working with business leaders, and now we work with companies all around the world on leadership development. But one thing that I am really focused on is teaching skills that can
Mm.
apply to everybody. So for people listening, whether or not you are a parent, you're a pastor, you're a teacher, you're an emerging leader, you're an entrepreneur, the powerful thing about leadership, I think part of with leadership, people often think that this only appeals to me if I have a position of leadership. And I don't
Mm.
believe that. My focus very much is leadership is a mindset, and we can actually start teaching this really, really young. And so just earlier today, I was talking to one of our clients and talking about, think about those leadership skills you want to start teaching to your children, and so for me, that really is so much of my purpose that I just get so excited about it. And I just want to share it with the world and make sure that we can all kind of learn these practical tools.
Well, your book, Three Chairs, just nailed it. So that's what
Mhm.
we spent our time in last time. Give
Right.
everybody an overview of the three
Sure.
chairs, and then we're going to go in and begin to unpack some of the qualities that are needed to live in that middle chair. So give everybody a little flyover real quick.
Okay, so here's a quick little summary for everybody who has not heard it. So this is my book, The Three Chairs, hit number 2 in the Wall Street Journal, which we were super excited about. So The Three Chairs is a framework that I created almost 30 years ago. So after specializing with teenagers and realizing that there was a lot of young people that were really, really struggling with confidence, I started really unpacking all the different research that had already been done on the power of the mind and the mindset and different levels of confidence, and how you can actually predict a lot of people's behavior based on what kind of attitude they actually have. So to teach it, a lot of research is like sitting on dusty shelves in libraries and in journals that nobody ever reads. I thought, how can this data, this research come to life?
Mm.
And how can it really, because I'm about change. I want to kind of create change for all ages. So I created the concept called the three chairs. So here are the three chairs very quickly, and my TED Talk goes into more detail about this as well. People who sit in that left chair have what I call the insecure mindset. So they kind of put themselves down. They're really, really tough on themselves, very critical. They may look confident, but inside they feel they have the imposter syndrome. They're not feeling so good about themselves. The person on that right chair has what's called the arrogant mindset, or the arrogant leader. They're pretty cocky. They're very tough. They'll put you in their place. They tend to blame things on other people. They're very cocky and arrogant. Then you've got that middle chair mindset, that confident mindset. And that's the person that feels really good about themselves. They're not arrogant, but they're not insecure. So they really understand who they are. They know that they really understand their self-worth, that their self-worth is not based on how much money they make, what title they have, how thin they are, how much money they're earning. So they really authentically understand that their self-worth is based on who they are, not what they achieve. And they have this beautiful sense of confidence with themselves. And so basically the first part of really understanding the book is getting people to really think about, what chair are you sitting in the majority part of your life, and what chair are you sitting in, and then how does that impact different decision making. We've got a great free resource for parents, because I'm a parent, as Mike, of teenagers, teen boys. And I've been teaching this for a long time, but I really wanted parents to have a tool to talk about this with your kids. So we have a free discussion questions on our website, dkleadership.org. And you can go there. You can actually download those discussions and watch the TED Talk and really talk to your kids about what chair are you sitting in and how does that impact your life? How does that impact your goal setting, your friendships, your communication? And then we've got also discussion questions for teams and also for schools, because this 3-chair concept applies to everybody, which is why I think that's why the TED Talk just exploded last year. I think, you know what, after we chatted, I don't even think I've told you this. We hit number 6 most viewed in the world last year.
Oh my goodness.
It completely went ballistic. So we're coming up on 6 million views on the TED Talk. So the TED Talk this is a business leadership book.
Yep.
After the book came out, I was asked to do a TED Talk. The TED Talk went viral. And so and I think the TED Talk, I did it a little different than the book. I made the TED Talk so it's applicable so parents could watch it with their kids, and teachers could watch with their classrooms, and businesses could watch with their team. So I talk really about the 3 chairs and how that applies to really every kind of part of our life. And so, but the discussion questions are really good because you know, a lot of times parents or teachers, they don't know, okay, I can watch this, but then how do I go deeper? How can I have some meaningful conversations? So the free discussion questions that are on our website are a really good resource to just kind of go deeper with it.
Well, I'm so glad you directed it to parents, because I don't care what boardroom you sit in. I don't care the locker room that you are the head coach or the principal or the superintendent or whatever it is.
Right.
Most likely you have some people at home, and they are the hardest to lead of all the people you're going to lead all day. And all your great ideas that everybody at work's like, woohoo, this is great. At home, they're like, okay, really? I mean, and it's so easy, Dr. Karyn, with kids to go, well, they're just, you know, because I believe, and I think you and I agree on this, that God knits us together in the womb. And there's a unique wiring we all have to lean into one of those outside chairs, right?
Yes.
Either
100%.
to lean into being insecure or lean into being a little arrogant.
Yes.
But it's possible, and I believe it's very probable, that we can teach skills to move them in that middle chair, correct?
100%. Yes. And you're absolutely right. So one of the things that one of the questions that are on the discussion questions is, you know, where do you see yourself sitting the majority of the time? And then one of the questions is, under stress, which chair do you move to?
That's right.
And so I can't remember if I told you this last time we chatted, but for Mother's Day last year, I asked my kid said, we have twins that are 16. And they said, Mom, what do you want for Mother's Day? I said, I know what I want for Mother's Day. Very clear. I want fresh flowers from the garden. Don't spend any money. And I would love to watch my own TED Talk and print my own discussion questions and discuss it as a family. They're like, done. So we did that, Mike. We did that.
Wow.
And we had an hour conversation with my 2 16-year-old boys. We had with my husband. We had the most amazing conversation. And we talked about, what chair do you see yourself sitting in? And then we started thinking about different friends that they have. What chair do you think this person sits in? What about this person? We started going through the questions. And one of the questions was, under stress, what chair do you see yourself sitting in? And what about the rest of your family? So talk about a vulnerable conversation for parents, because one of the things that we talk about is that, you know, we can all appear professionally in the middle chair, right?
Yep.
And we have like this kind of mask. Where are we really sitting? You know, who really knows that is our family,
That's right.
our spouse, our children. So where's our authentic self? And so absolutely. So, you know, this is fluid. We're all moving. Nobody sits in one chair 100% of the time. But you want to think about, okay, when I'm at work, where do I sit? When I'm with my friends, where do I sit? When I'm with my in-laws, where do I sit? When, you know, starting to have, I think part of the reason why people like the 3 chairs so much, it's so simple to understand. You can teach it to 5-year-olds, but it's such a great self-awareness tool.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, people now have a framework. Businesses love it, because now they can actually start thinking about, okay, we need to make sure we're hiring from the middle chair, we're promoting from the middle chair. The friendship one is phenomenal for teens. My kids started learning the 4 chairs when they were, the 3 chairs when they were in grade 4. And once they had that framework, it was amazing to watch them navigate choosing friends. And, you know, we would kind of, when they would start a new school, they're like, oh, so-and-so, yeah, he's in the middle chair. Like they would actually say that, yeah, I think I'm going to be friends with so-and-so. I think, oh, Mom, they're totally in the middle chair. Like, it's now part of the language. And what a gift when we can start teaching these skills to our children. So I think that's why it's resonated so well, is that it's just so simple, but we can apply it literally to all parts of our life.
It's so neat because I've gotten to watch this lived out. My daughter, I remember I was just with her the other week. So she's 26 now.
Okay.
She's married, doing great in her career. And I went out to do an event for her because they love free labor, right? When you go do events for your kids. And so,
Right.
but I went out to do this and she's introducing me to these business owners and saying, this is my dad. And I remember that little girl being in middle school, hiding behind a pylon, a big pylon there in her school lobby. When she saw me coming, I was speaking to an assembly and she's hiding because she didn't want to be seen with me. And she was so insecure and so middle school and insecure. And to watch how she and my son, both who are grown now, have shifted in those chairs, it gives every parent hope, right? That they're not stuck there, but how we lead them and the chair we sit in really does matter. And today we're going to dive in on really EQ, really where we're going to spend our time today, because I think IQ we're sort of stuck with. I think we can, as my mother used to tell me all the time, and I don't know how they say this in Canada, she would say, well, I know you don't do as well in school, but you're well-rounded. That was my mom's phrase of going, you're not bright, be nice to people. All right. which is an EQ issue, right? So when it comes to EQ, you lay out there's the cares, right?
Yes.
And so give everybody a real quick synopsis. So if somebody says they have, what is EQ? You lay it out, and you've patented this, and I like that because it makes it super easy to remember. But we're going to dive in on one of them. So give everybody what EQ stands for, and then we're going to dive in on communication.
Perfect. Okay. So understanding the three chairs is kind of like step one. All right. So getting, again, that self-awareness. And then the second question that a lot of people say, okay, well, that's great. So then let's dive in a little bit more. What are the skills that, because people are like, well, I want to sit in the middle chair. I want to feel confident. I want to feel good about myself. So what are the skills that I need to sit in that middle chair? And really with what the middle chair is, it's a seat around, it's really a seat about emotional intelligence. This is the seat for EQ. So there are 5 core skills we all need to develop, whether or not we're 5 or 50 or 90, doesn't make any difference. There are 5 core skills we need to develop. And I love acronyms because I find acronyms help people chunk information.
That's right.
All based on science. This is a science-packed book. We're drawing from science, but we're going to make it really practical. So the 5 core skills, it spells the acronym CARDS. Okay. CARDS. So C stands for your communication skills, your ability to give and receive feedback. We're going to do a bit more of a deep dive on that. A stands for your attitude of yourself and your goal setting skills. Do you have a clear focus and vision for the goals that you want to achieve in your life? R stands for your relationship skills, your ability to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else. This is where generational differences, cultural differences, personality differences, racial differences all come into play. It's realizing that the way I see the world is different than how you see the world, and different than somebody else. It's really being able to put ourselves, this is where empathy comes in, the ability to really put ourselves in the shoes of somebody else. D stands for decision-making, time management, and self-discipline skills. So a lot of people don't realize that when they are managing their time, they're using their EQ. A lot of people don't know that. So someone who has very high EQ, they know this is my goal, this is what I want to do, but they don't just think about it, they step on the gas, they take initiative, they do something about it. And even though they may not feel like it, they make decisions based on values and goals, not by feelings. And this is really, really important because we are so feeling driven as a culture. We want to do whatever feels good. Well, that's not according to EQ. High EQ, it's like, I'm going to manage my time that is aligned with my vision and my goals and my values, not what feels easy. And then the S stands for your stress and your emotion management skills. And this is where my background in psychology as a mental health professional is really helpful, because somebody who, again, with very high EQ, they understand stress, they understand anxiety, and they really understand the tools that they need to do to manage their emotions effectively so that they manage their emotions instead of their emotions managing them. And the D and the S are highly interconnected. So if somebody really manages their decision making, their time management really well, there's a very good chance that they actually have lower stress. Those two are highly, so they're all, think of it like they're 5 puzzle pieces that are all interconnected. And so one of the things I tell people is like, get to know the 5, do a scorecard of the 5. We have also a fabulous free scorecard. It's an EQ scorecard. It's on our website. DK Leadership stands for Dr. Karyn Leadership.org, O-R-G. In Canada, O-R-G is not a nonprofit. I know in the US, I think it's a non-for-profit, but so it's DKLeadership.org. And you can download this scorecard. The scorecard's great. You can use it for your teens, yourself, your teams, and it measures your EQ in a really simple way. And so we want to, as great leaders, whether or not we're in high school or we're running a, $500 million company, we want to always still pay attention. The IQ is still important. That, really paying attention, education, very, very important. And we also want to make sure that we're really cultivating our EQ and ourself and those around us.
How critical is communication? We think about this, and this is one we're going to roll up our sleeves on today. And I hope we'll get to do this again in the future and unpack these others. How you work with companies of all sizes and people of all shapes and sizes.
Yes.
How critical is communication to success in the happiness and enjoy of the people that are not only exhibiting it, but the people that are working alongside them?
It's a really good question, Mike. And I think about, these 5 skills, and they're all important and they're all interconnected. Okay. So they're all important. They're all interconnected. And at different stages of our life and in different stages of our leadership development, different skills are going to be more important. So for example, when I work with teenagers, a lot of them, they really hone the attitude, like their goal setting skills and their decision-making skills. Those are the ones that they're really kind of diving into. In the 20s, a lot of people are kind of really pouring into their relationship skills. When I start working with more like managers, senior leaders, entrepreneurs, professional groups, they're really kind of dialing in their communication, their stress management skills. So it is interesting how different stages of life, we almost are drawing more. But, my whole philosophy is like, let's teach all these skills to teenagers as soon as we can. Like, why wait till we're in their 30s to learn how to manage our stress or emotion management? So all that to say, when we were working with organizations, we work with companies around the world. When we get brought in for leadership development, it's communication and stress are the 2 categories that we say, okay, Karyn, we need to teach our managers how to communicate. We need to really help our senior leaders in terms of reducing their stress. So I would say those tend to be a bit more popular, certainly as we're leading other people, right? So as we're leading other people, but the communication, like doing a bit more of a deep dive in the communication, is such an important set of skills because, the second that we're dealing with any kind of relationships with our spouse, our kids, our team, our neighbor, people at the church, conflict is going to happen. And I think one of the things that I certainly have found really helpful in learning all of this over the last almost 30 years is that, growing up, I used to think that conflict was a bad thing, that somehow conflict is a bad thing. And, so if you've got conflict, there's something wrong. And one of the first things in leadership you realize is that no, conflict is not a bad thing. Conflict is actually a lot of times a sign of growth. So whether or not, you're thinking about your small group or, your business, your team at work or your marriage, conflict is going to happen. It means that people are different. People are coming together that are seeing something different. So we need to lean into that. We need to kind of really lean into that and not see conflict as a bad thing, but see it as a growth opportunity. And really kind of trying to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody else and try to see, from their perspective, and really teaching ourselves and our children around learning how to be assertive and trying to problem solve. I really feel like if there's one skill that is so critical for people to learn, it's learning how to problem solve effectively. But we can only get there if we realize, like, no, problems are not the bad thing. Problems are just an opportunity that people are seeing something different. People have a different value system. We need to lean into that and try to figure out how can we problem solve so that everybody's needs are actually getting met.
So what's the key to a team that is going to deal with conflict? So what's the difference if you've walked in and you're a consultant and a coach? What's the difference between healthy conflict in very unhealthy conflict? And what's the secret to a team that attacks it in a healthy way?
It's a really good question. So, all right, let's use the three chairs on how different people in different chairs deal with conflict. Okay. So conflict's going to happen, everybody. It's going to happen in every, so let's not be surprised. Like, oh, here's conflict. It's like, oh no, here is conflict. Okay. We were expecting conflict and conflict. So I think the first thing is realizing conflict is going to happen in the healthiest systems. Okay. So I think just even having that mindset is actually really important. But with conflict, it's very interesting. So people in the left chair, based on research, what we find, people in the left chair, they tend to avoid conflict. Okay. So they tend to avoid conflict. They keep it to themselves. So the problem is that you never really know if they're upset or not, because they're keeping it to themselves. So a lot of times in that left chair, they either keep it to themselves, or, let's say you and I are in the same small group. Okay. And let's say you are doing something that really frustrates me. If I'm sitting in that left chair, you won't even know that I'm actually upset about it. Or I'm not going to go talk to you, Mike. I'm going to go talk to Susan over here about what you're doing. So what have I now just done? I've created a triangle. It's called, in psychology, we call it triangulation. It's super unhealthy. It's very toxic. We see it in churches. We see it in companies. We see it in families. We see it in schools. And it's toxic because the problem is frozen. You don't even know I'm actually upset. We can't solve anything if you don't even know about it. But also it's not, now I'm not even respecting you behind your back. I'm creating a whole war zone. Okay, so in that left chair, they tend to either be passive or passive aggressive. Okay, that's often with what happens. The right chair, what often happens is, again, if we're in the same small group and you've done something, I'm going to go right up to you and I'm going to attack you. I'm going to blame you. So the first word out of my mouth generally is going to be you. You do this, you do that. I'm going to blame you and I'm going to attack you without really caring how you are feeling in this. And I'm not interested to resolve it. I'm interested to attack. I'm interested to blame. Middle chair, very different. So again, using that as an example of we're in the same small group, you've done something that has upset me. I'm going to respect you and respect me. I'm going to pick up the phone and call you directly. I'm not going to involve anybody else. So this is how we deal with conflict healthy. You keep it one-on-one. Do not involve anybody else. We keep this one-on-one. I assert myself using key language like I think, I feel, I need. From my perspective, here's how I see it. Mike, how do you see it? So now we're having a conversation. So I will stand up for myself because I respect myself, but I equally respect you. Here's how I see it, Mike. How do you see it? So I'm going to listen to your perspective. And then once we both have a chance to share a perspective, how can we make this better? How can we problem solve this together? So the focus is on voicing our opinion in a healthy way, but really moving then towards problem solving together. Okay, so it's the same situation dealt with three different ways, and only one of the ways is actually done healthy. And you think about scripture, you think about how much of scripture is talked about conflict.
That's right.
So healthy psychology is healthy theology. Healthy theology is healthy psychology. These are not, when I was going to school and seminary, there's always that kind of debate, theology and psychology. Truth is truth. It doesn't change. And so that is the healthy way in terms of actually responding in terms of conflict. And you think about how Jesus talked and spoke around teaching to deal with conflict. So he is the ultimate model in terms of how to actually do that. But it's a good way of understanding, again, the mindset of conflict. Conflict is not a bad thing. We need to kind of lean into it but really assert ourselves and respect other people as well.
Final question today. I could sit on this call with you for hours. You're just unbelievable. God puts us, and we say this all the time in the call on the podcast. He puts us in the spaces and places that he put us for a reason bigger than us. Why do you think it's so critical for leaders who are listening to this interview? Why do you think it's so critical they get communication right if they're going to be the spiritual leader God created them to be?
Oh, what a good question. When you think about the way I just kind of described it, all the different kind of skills, in many ways, I think the reason why that communication skill is so important, because it is literally drawing on everything that I really believe are around what God really wants for all of us. He wants us to love. He wants us to love God. He wants us to love ourselves, and he wants us to love other people. And the problem is that if we don't learn how to do this well, this does not love other people. This does not love other people, nor does it love actually ourselves. So what's beautiful about when we can really lean in and really learn how to do this and to do it well, it's in almost embodying so much with what scripture talks about in terms of the skills and the wisdom that scripture offers around how should we live our life and live it really well. How can we love God? How can we love ourselves? How can we love other people? And if we don't do this well, it causes so much conflict and pain. And not only that, but it wastes so much time and energy. You know, one of the things that's really interesting when I work with a lot of businesses and organizations is around everyone's like, I don't have any time. You want to waste a lot of time, spend your time in that left and the right chair. Because, you know, if we're not resolving things well, if we are not learning how to resolve things well and fast, we're going to waste so much time and energy. You know, life is short. I often say life is short. We all have a mission and a purpose to do. We don't want to be wasting our time on misunderstandings and talking about things behind people's backs. So it's efficient. Not only is it spiritually accurate, I believe, but it's also efficient in terms of this is really the best way to really kind of help ourselves and help other people in terms of achieve the mission that we have, both professionally and also personally, actually, as well.